Is there anything more deep state than bodies of aliens at right, Pat? I mean,
The part I struggle with, and I haven't really processed, is what does it mean for us?
does it bring us together or does it make it worse? Welcome to Bourbon and Rum, the podcast dedicated to civil conversation. I'm Kent, I like rum, and I'm from the left side of the aisle.
And I'm Kyle. I like bourbon. I tend to be a little more conservative. We're brothers talking politics over bourbon and rum.
What are you drinking?
I got a bottle of High West, a blend of it's MGP bourbon mixed in, finished off
Summit,
in Barbados rum barrels.
Summit County, Utah, right?
Yeah, Park City, Utah, and it's got a little rum, twist to it. So trying to
Well,
be there in spirit with you.
I'm honored that you would reach out that way. I just made myself a, kind of like a tall rum sour with sparkling water, kind of a cooler sipper for a sunny day.
Well, and I have to point out that we're recording earlier today, and there's something cool about sipping cocktails at 1 p.m. on a Saturday. It's quite nice.
Well, you know, time to handle the important stuff.
That's right.
Hey, you texted me a really interesting thing coming off of a when you were overseas, and I'd like to hear what you said about that.
Yeah, and you texted me some stuff too that I want to hear from you, and I think there's probably an intersection there that we could come up with. Um, yeah, I was in Europe this week. I was in France, in Toulouse, down in the south of France, and it's not a huge city. It's where Airbus is, and so there's a lot of industry there, but it's not like Paris. Um, and I had a taxi one day and just started shooting the breeze with the taxi driver. Really nice guy, and we really got into an engaging discussion. I don't know how I'd gotten into it. I think I'd said something about, what countries do you like to travel to? And he said, well, I really enjoyed Africa. And I was like, oh, no kidding. So we got to talking about that. And he'd been a soldier in the French military. I don't know what service it was, what branch, but he'd been stationed in Congo, Chad, Kenya, several different, remote outposts in Africa. And, and I'm thinking, man, those like some of those places are pretty remote. That's you're not going to New York City. You're going to the middle of nowhere in a pretty rough area. But he said what he really loved about it is he got to know the people. And he said the people in these countries in Africa have absolutely nothing to their name. They have zero material possessions, but they have a network of family and friends and community that really doesn't exist anyplace else. And he said that was really compelling. And then that kind of launched him into this conversation about, in France, once upon a time, there was more of a sense of community. You had these smaller villages, and people, had these distinct cultural differences. We're talking about the cultural differences, and it's not a huge country. And you go 50 kilometers in one direction, and it may be a completely different culture. And he said there was all this uniqueness about their culture. But he said, everybody is becoming Americanized. And he wasn't saying it like from an antagonistic, it was a really good conversation and really good dude. But he's like, everybody wants to be American now. And he's like, all of these cultures are going away because everybody wants to adopt what's cool in America. He said, I grew up and I watched Sylvester Stallone and Rocky, and it's like, that's what I want to be. I don't want to be the culture of my ancestors here in France. And
Hmm.
and what I found really interesting, the terminology he used, he said, I view it as a form of colonialism. Like
Hmm.
America is colonizing the world through its culture. And I was like, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
That really makes sense. And it's really a lot of it's the advancement of a capitalist approach. It's all the brands. I mean, you got McDonald's, you got Coca-Cola everywhere. Uh, Hollywood's probably the biggest colonizer of all these cultures because
Yeah.
everybody's been watching movies and they all want to see what's in the movie. His words were really reinforced when I was walking around this town and they all were advertising a Black Friday sale. And I'm like, okay, they don't celebrate Thanksgiving, but they're celebrating Black Friday. Okay, very telling.
that's
Well,
that's really interesting.
yeah,
And I can see, yeah, I mean, hard to argue with. I actually was reading about something the other day that kind of touched on this. And I think that the US's cultural power, and again, I would go combination of Hollywood and, I mean, do they even call it Madison Avenue anymore? Like the whole
yeah,
advertising infrastructure. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. But it mentioned that there are other places that it was an article, I think it was Wikipedia, but it kind of talked about cultural powerhouses of the world or cultural superpowers. In the
yeah,
US, obviously, from Levi's to Coca Cola to everything else. But they pointed out, especially in the last couple decades, South Korea with
yeah.
electronics and K pop and all of that. Um, Jamaica, pound for pound, the influence on music and culture that way. So there's these pockets of places that have a really big, important piece. But I think the volume alone of United States stuff just kind of just
But
steamrolls a lot of things.
Korea is a good example, and I claim to be an expert, but I lived there for a year in the early '90s in a town in the Southwest, and it was, you know, it, it was cool because, and that's what I told this taxi driver. I was like, actually, whenever I travel abroad, it pisses me off when I'm someplace and there's Americans. I'm like, how do I get away from these Americans? Like, I want to come to I want to experience the real city. I don't want to be surrounded by a bunch of Americans. And what I was going to say too is he said, because I mentioned Paris, he's like, well, Paris isn't French. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? He's like, no, they're not even, they're their own thing. They're not even French. They have nothing to do with France. I thought that was, because honestly, you go there and it's all Americans. I mean, everybody you see there is American tourist.
Well, and if you go to Times Square, I mean, have you been to America? If you go to the
Yeah.
Las Vegas Strip, have you been to America?
True. Yeah, good point.
Yes, but boy, it's kind of a different. So I guess maybe I might put it back to you. Is it really American culture that's permeating around the world, or is it like faux American culture? That there's that layer.
Or is it, or does American culture transcend? And where I was going to go with Korea, I was stationed there in the early '90s. It was cool because it was so different, and it was very, it was like a completely different place. I went, the last time I went was probably 2015, 2016. I mean, if you walk downtown Seoul, there's spots you'd think you're in New York City. I mean, it is,
Mhm.
but to your point, they do have their own uniqueness. You have the K-pop, you have the food is way different. So is the promulgation of this attitude or this approach, is it American, or is American just the first that got it and everybody else is getting the same bug that America got 100 years ago?
Yeah, I just wonder, when he's describing that America culture colonialism, that's I live in a small town. That's not what it's like. I mean, I wear Levi's. I mean, I can't say I'm divorced from the culture, but there's a generic kind of television culture that I don't think most people in this country live in, much less people around the world. It
Yeah,
feels very synthetic. The same way when you're in Vegas, that the whole thing feels fake. It
right,
feels fake, like the walls of the buildings are fake. It's all
right.
like
Yeah.
plastic or something.
Well, and honestly, that I was talking about that with somebody else this week about Dubai. You go to Dubai, and I think coming as an American, like if I go to Vegas, I'm like, yeah, well, that's Vegas. But Dubai is very much like that. It's all glitz and glamour. And it's like, yeah, but I flew 16 hours. Can I not see a cultural, like something, a local someplace? No, there's none of it. It's all
Yeah.
Vegasy.
Some places that I haven't traveled nearly as much as you have, but I would say, Hong Kong is interesting. Like it doesn't, there are some touchstones to kind of the monoculture of capitalist societies, but it has its own specific and distinctive things. Like I feel like that's old enough and big enough and strong enough that that's not really going to get rocked by this monolithic monoculture.
Yeah. Okay. Today and just for the listeners, we're going to try to weave in three different conversations that we're not sure how this is going to work, but I think there's a theme here. I don't know what it is yet, but I want to try to dig into it. So now, Kent, introduce the videos you sent me. I'm going to blow out a
Yeah,
candle
I
real quick.
sent you the whole clip and then a zeroed in clip on a conversation between Ezra Klein and Fareed Zakaria. In in my bubble, I wouldn't have to introduce either of those gentlemen, but for the sake of listeners who maybe don't swim in my circles, Ezra Klein is with the New York Times. He's the host of the Ezra Klein podcast, and Fareed Zakaria, I think, still on CNN. He was the he was the youngest managing editor of Foreign Affairs Quarterly. Fun fact.
Hmm.
Just I think just a really brilliant guy. But the whole thing, it's an hour long, and our producer will link it. It's essentially him self-describing as a part of the center left. And it's a lament that the center left has lost its way, lost its dominance, and that one quote that just kind of really kicked me in the gut. Democrats have lost the ability to talk to people who don't have a college degree. It's pretty compelling. His hypothesis is this that, um, we've talked many times about this political shift that's happened in this country, almost complete flip flop, and like nobody ever noticed. But, now you've got, instead of the Democratic Party of my youth being the party of organized labor and the working class, and the Republicans were all the managerial class, a lot of that has flipped. Not exclusively, certainly people with different stripes, but his point is that now, the loudest voices in the Democratic Party are the far left and mostly far left on cultural issues. He said that's why you're losing. That most Americans, and I think we could find evidence of this, most Americans are pretty happy with the general run of kind of center left moderate economic and policy issues. Um, they're not comfortable with the really, you know, woke, whatever you want to call it, very uh, progressive cultural and basically religious issues. And it's like that's not really a winner for people, but moderate economic policies. And he pointed out, I just thought this was really interesting. You've got arguably two successful Democrat presidents since John F. Kennedy, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Both of them were, I mean, squarely what you would call center left. I mean, you listen to people and they talk about, oh, that Barack Obama is the worst thing in the world. Look, his policies that he ran on and the policies that he governed by were moderate left, not hard
Hmm.
left.
Did you see
Um,
the Bill Maher clip I sent you?
no, but I think it's probably cut from the same cloth. Am I right?
Right. Yeah, he was advocating for a John Fetterman, Pete Buttigieg ticket,
Yeah.
because he's like, they're both down the middle, you know.
Yeah, anyway, I thought it was really interesting, and it was kind of an indictment from Zakaria, and like he took some really kind of pushing back against the most radical cultural positions, and like that's not a winner. That is not a winner with the broad populace, and that the Democratic Party needs to find its voice, I guess, is his point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I started listening. I didn't get that far in it, but I started listening. And one thing I thought was one thing I kind of stuck on a little bit is Klein Ezra was talking about, well, I don't know, because I think Freed at the beginning kind of characterized what he saw as the traditional Republican Party. And then Ezra's like, well, you're kind of whitewashing it. I mean, it wasn't really a party of old racists and all this stuff. And, that was kind of the concept. And I was struck by that because I'm like, well, okay, yeah. I mean, there were figures in the party that you could pin as racist. I mean, there was good to David Duke, but it's not, David Duke wasn't exactly a leader in the party. I mean, he was kind of a fringe.
Right.
But then, I'm like, I mean, Robert Byrd was one of the longest serving Democrat senators in the House. And that guy was in the KKK, or,
Right.
I think like Lyndon Johnson, who, yeah, he's the father of the civil rights movement, yet the guy is, captured on camera all the time using the N word. I think the racial dynamic of it, and I feel like there's an element today. I think Democrats try to represent themselves as being, well, we're the non-racist party. But I think they use the racial identity and the racial political element as a pragmatic thing. Like, I don't think Lyndon Johnson down deep was I think he's a pretty racist guy, but he saw the value of the voting block. You know what I mean? He saw a pragmatism there. And so I don't know. I think
Well,
you
I would
could make
say
claims on.
no. I
Go
think
ahead.
you're right. I think though that there's the other side of that coin, and part of the reason that we're in the boat that we're in is Richard Nixon's Southern strategy. It was an overt thing because Kennedy was pretty left and was progressive on racial issues. And I think he really was. I mean, for all of his
Yeah,
faults, I think that that was a core belief. I think that
right.
Johnson, it was more expedience. I think you're right. Although Johnson had a lot more sympathy for Mexican Americans. He really had a heart for Hispanics. There, so it's said anyway. But it was much more of an expedient for him, more of a passion for Kennedy. But when Kennedy and then when Johnson did things like the Voting Rights Act, Johnson said, it's going to lose the South for the Democratic Party for a generation. And in that very moment, Richard Nixon was like, let's call it the Southern strategy. We're going to go out there and we're going to, you know, I'm not making judgments on who's a racist or not, but there was a specific and deliberate pitch to say, okay, if the Democrats are going to line up nationally, if the Democrats are going to align around civil rights, voting rights, racial issues, you're going to have a whole host of people, Democrats, Southern Democrats, that have voted Democrat for 100 years because the Republicans were the party of Reconstruction. But if we don't make them uncomfortable, if we don't push a racial agenda or a equal rights agenda, we could pick up those voters. And in some ways, that's what happened. That's why, what was his name? Richard Helms? Is that who I'm talking about? The from North Carolina, Jesse Helms,
Jesse. Oh, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
Strom Thurmond, and all of those guys. They all switched to the Republican Party in that '60s time frame. And so, no,
Well,
I
and
don't
I
think the
guess,
Republican
I guess,
Party is a racist party.
well, and I guess that's all I'm going is that I don't think either party is inherently good or inherently bad. I
No.
think I think politicians in both parties manipulate the populace for their own means, and that can cross both ends of that spectrum. I guess that's my only point.
100% agree. 100% agree with that.
The other thing, and I'm not trying to dump into, I don't want to, I don't want to breeze over the key element of it, which makes sense. But one thing, another thing Ezra said that I thought was interesting, he started getting into income inequality. And he's like, in the last, I forget what time frame he said, I want to say it was the last 20 years, that the top 1% went from like 10 trillion in wealth to 23 trillion in wealth, you know. And then he's like, in the bottom 50% went from 900 billion to 4 trillion. And he's like, isn't that awful that we've got all this income inequality? And I'm like, well, actually, those numbers mean that the bottom 50 actually has grown faster than the top 1%.
Then I think his numbers are wrong because I don't think that's the case. I'd be happy to be proven wrong on this, but I think
Yeah,
that,
I'd love to see that.
yeah, I think that income inequality is a huge problem in my mind.
Fareed called it the 0.001% is
Yeah.
like the hedge fund money. And then what
Yeah.
he was saying is he was like, hey, we got the same tax bracket for the guy making $4 million a year to the guy that's making $8 billion a year.
Yeah. Yeah. I just,
But but the people that lament that are the left, right? Mainly.
mhm.
And one of the main points of the podcast was the people in the upper income brackets are mostly Democrat. So if you're so worried about income inequality, then why don't you cough up some of your money, fund guy, and take care of the bottom? You know, it reminds me of this. I don't know if you've seen this, but there was this. I forget who it was. I think it was a Tucker Carlson thing, so you probably didn't see it. But there was a. I didn't watch the whole video, but it was like a short, and they were talking about Ukraine, and Mark Cuban's on there with Tucker Carlson, and Mark Cuban's like, well, you know, I just think we should give more money to Ukraine because you know I've got family there, and you know I think it's something I really believe in. I really think the U.S. should fund that. And Tucker was like, well, Mark, how much money have you given to Ukraine? And he's like, well, I haven't really given any money. And he's like, well, you got family there. Like you're the one guy that ought to give money because you have people there and you haven't given any money, but you want everybody else to give money, you know? And it's like, I just, that, I don't know, that just gets me when somebody's like, well, we've got too much money and we're the ones in charge and yet we're not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Not in charge, but we're the ones that have the money. It's just,
Yeah. I mean, there's some inherent inequity there, and just in terms of how people view the world. Well, the other thing we talked about, what would be really cool is if this really is prescient. I can't believe it would be, but I'll quote Joe Rogan. I was listening to the podcast the other day. There's a new documentary that has just come out. I see it's available on Amazon Prime. I'm planning to watch it tonight. It's called
age of disclosure.
Age of Disclosure. And it is about the public discussion about what the government knows and has covered up about extraterrestrials and UFOs. And it's got an all-star cast, including Marco Rubio talking about this. And the author or the filmmaker made a statement on Joe Rogan. I think it was yesterday's program. And he was like, I've heard people talking. And of course, that should be my first red flag
Yeah.
that people are talking. But he said, I hear that Trump is seriously considering laying it out there and telling people what the government knows. And I thought, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah. So let's recap these three subjects. One, there's some people that are lamenting that the U.S. culture has changed culture. There's this populist, not necessarily. I think we kind of deduce it's not necessarily U.S. It's this populist message of um, freedom and you know kind of like this shared global identity instead of individual cultures. And
Mm-hmm.
then we talked about in the political realm the the changing landscapes where these, I guess if I was going to boil down that discussion, it's almost that, the parties are not static entities. The parties move how they need to change to the changing attitudes and the groups. And so what was the Democratic Party once isn't the Democratic Party today, vice versa with the Republicans. And so maybe the theme of these two is nothing is static. Like if you think your little culture and your little town and your political party is going to be good to go for the next 20 years, it's going to change. Everything's going to change.
Yeah.
If aliens are real and we find evidence of this, and now how does that change? I mean, I get our parties and our cultures are going to change, but maybe there's an alien culture that is superior to our culture and our political way of thinking. I mean, it's certainly possible.
Yeah, I don't know. What's more powerful, the ability to transcend galaxies or the Coca-Cola script logo? I mean, we're going to find out. We're going to have the the big capitalist smackdown. What I had to laugh
Yeah, they're
is
going to be drinking Coke in this planet a trillion years away.
I did think so I'm a lifelong skeptic of the UFO bit. I really am, and it honestly hasn't changed that much. But I am really intrigued by the nature of the way the discussion has changed in, say, the last 5 years. Back to when the Navy released those Tic Tac videos and stuff like that. Like it's been treated as much more serious by people. And Congress, we talked about before, Congress got the briefing and they were all kind of like stunned when they came out of the thing. Um,
Can't, you know, if Trump announces it, then aliens and UFOs, the Republican Party is the party of aliens and UFOs now, Kent. We own that.
well, I'm saying, the ironic thing is if Trump announces it, you're going to have 60% of the country that isn't going to believe it until they roll out the stuff on the flatbed truck. We're going to need the actual alien autopsy video.
He's bringing out UFOs to distract from the Epstein files. It's all one
Um,
big plot. 60 years ago, they planted UFOs because the Republicans knew that Trump was going to be in trouble with a pedophile financier in 2025. And that's why yes, it's all a big conspiracy.
so I still refuse to, as much as I'm interested in this and the discussion around this makes sense, I refuse to believe that any alien civilization would bother to travel here in person. I we've talked about this before. Like you are in the aviation business and you think we shouldn't be building fighter planes, we should be building drones because it's too much of a pain to support the human being on the thing.
Yeah.
Hasn't that got to expand geometrically if we're talking about cosmic travel? Like, wouldn't they at some point
Well,
reach the
but
point where they didn't have to send the person?
we did talk about this a few months ago, and the game changer, and this would be a bigger game changer than UFOs and aliens, is if they figured out time travel.
Yeah.
That would be whoa.
Yeah.
That would
Well,
be a game changer.
and what I kind of believe is that it's easier for me to imagine that there are coexistent higher technology life forms on this planet that we don't see and normally understand. Like that would make more sense to me than somebody traveling here. You look at the pyramid. I'm going to weave together a bunch of stuff that doesn't make any sense, but bear with me. You look at people talk about the pyramids, the technology and the ability to build those back 6,000 years ago or whatever. Like it really it's kind of a stretch. And could that be an artifact of a much more highly advanced civilization? You look at the mythology of Atlantis, right? The super high tech civilization that gets sunk into the water. Could there be, whether human or non-human, species that evolved over the millennia that the earth has been around to have a civilization, and then either that civilization fall or they simply go into hiding? You know what could live in the depth of the ocean? You know how much of the ocean we know what's going on in there? Darn little. Darn little.
Well, I mean, okay, if you know, to your point, like how's a body in a plane going to come here from thousands of light years away? Really, the only answer is there's some transcension of, it's probably not a word, some type of transcending time. So
Yeah.
some type of time manipulation and travel. If that occurred, and then now Trump lays out this announcement, and we get all the technology, and we then figure out how to time travel, if not now, at some point in the future, then we would have executed time travel, which means the world that we see now has been manipulated multiple times by time travel that will have taken place in the future because they're going to unveil this to somebody and everything would have changed. And so, does that mean that, like, our view of the world isn't really how it was done the first time? There's been multiple travelers back in time, multiple times that have created all this crap, and we're now just seeing this amalgamation of multiple time travel experiences.
That
Am I
sort of
making any
sucks.
sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that sort of also answers where people have gotten sucked up into the simulation hypothesis.
Yeah.
Right? It kind of is. Like, it could be that the world we live in isn't a computer simulation, but it's not exactly wild. Like we're in a zoo more than we're living, like that could be part of this too, right? Like there's others that are observing, that are attentive to this, that are watching.
Hey, and I should point out for the audience, we're only drinking alcohol. Neither Kent nor I are into cannabis or acid. So this is purely alcohol induced slang here. I should make that disclaimer.
Yeah, it's just become so fascinating to me. It seems like it's a real thing people are talking about now. I can't wait to
So
see
then,
this
okay, so
documentary.
then you go back to our previous discussions about culture, about political party changes. If there is, if we're looking at a past that is tainted by time travel that would occur in the future from now, but we won't know about it until we learn about it, how many of these things are not pure? And how many of these things haven't really changed? And how many of these things are just changing, to your point, this swamp? I don't know, you used a pond, or I don't know what analogy you used, but like this mess of changes.
Yeah. What's interesting is if we zoom out a little bit, I mean, I don't want to get too woo woo about this,
Yeah.
but this guy laid it out there, and I can't stop thinking about what would it like. We've got the generic case, right? What would it be if a U.S. president said, "Hey, I got the file now. I put it all together. Let me tell you what the government's been hiding from you for 60 years, 80 years, since the 40s. And here's why." And they were well intended, but the time has come that we got to talk about now. Like, a lot of people that I've heard speak on this think that, we're not the only country that has discovered these facts and these technologies, and that that really what's going on is it's almost like a Manhattan Project kind of
Arms race. Yeah.
arms race, right? Because you don't want the Chinese to get in tight with the aliens before we do. So, you got that generic thing. A president steps to the podium and says, "Hey, good news." But I never thought about it like in an era where the president is Trump, when we have this rampant division among people. And I'm halfway joking, but there are people that would not believe it if Donald Trump said it. And we would go
100%.
exactly to what you said, that it's
Yeah.
like, wow, he just made this up. He's trying to divert. This is his way to stay out of jail as he's claiming aliens. I mean, could he,
Yeah.
how would he validate this? I,
Well,
I would
or,
doubt him.
I
I
mean,
mean,
if all the other presidents knew this, um, Trump is a wild card. And
mhm.
maybe all the other presidents were like, no, the last guy was right. I don't care. This isn't political. We need to do our thing. Well, you get Trump, who just, I mean, he literally says whatever comes into his head, I think, hence the Miss Piggy reference at a news conference. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like how did, like, you think about, does he not like process the implication of saying something just idiotic? It's just mind blowing to me. But
Or that he,
my point
he
is, like,
actually
if,
thought it. Like, not
yeah,
only did it go into his head and he said, like, anyway, like, whatever.
I don't
But
even understand what that means. But um, I mean, if anybody was a threat to release all this crap, it'd be him. I mean, like, I don't care. I'll just release it. I mean, if it exists, he's the only guy that's going to say it of the presidents that we've had so far.
well, and is this not the ultimate deep state? Like, is there anything more deep state than bodies of aliens at right, Pat? I mean, that is like, that would be, if we found out they've hid that for 80 years, I mean, that is the swamp on
Oh,
full display.
I think Trump's thinking about condos at these in these foreign planets. I mean, think of the development possibilities in these other regions.
Like, I'm really interested in it. The buzz that's going on about it is really interesting to me. Those cockpit videos, it's really interesting to me. I can't get my head around why the hell anybody would be here buzzing around. Why would they be buzzing around in spaceships that occasionally just crash? Like,
Right.
like I got
Exactly.
here from you know Alpha Centauri. I was fine, but I flew a little low over the Rockies and I hit the deck. Like, that
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. The part I struggle with, and I haven't really processed, is what does it mean for us
Yeah.
if this is the case?
Well, the religion angle is a really significant part
Big
of
time.
that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Well, and to the other conversation we had about our perspectives and cultural elements, if much of our worldview, well, our worldview is shaped by our world, and our world today is the earth. If the world of life is larger, I mean, that naturally changes your worldview and how you view everything. I mean, it really would have an impact on many of our uh, political elements and cultural elements and kind
yeah.
of view of the world.
Yeah. Does it bring us together or does it make it worse?
That's a really good question. I think, honestly, well, my thing is, unless somebody sees the technology, unless it's like the Terminator and everybody sees the guy melting and coming back to life, and okay, like you said, incontrovertible evidence, I think initially it's going to be a political thing. I think you're exactly right. I think it's going to be, well, Trump's full of baloney and we don't believe it. It's got to, and that's, I mean, if he's going to have a news conference, he needs to have like a device he can hold up and say, this isn't from us. I mean, that's the only way people are going to believe it.
Yeah. And he needs to then hand the device to Schumer, who looks at it and hands the device to, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
they're all there. How would you, okay, so just from a, like from an event planning standpoint, how would you script that? Okay, here's the deal, guys. He's going to go public with it. Um, you know, we
They're not
need
from
both
here. They're
Republicans
really
and Democrats.
strange. I can already hear him talking about it. Well, they say they're not from here. They're not from here. That's what they say. They're from someplace else. I think they're from another. I think they're from another world. They're from somewhere.
And it's
How's
far
he
away,
gonna
far
far
away.
away place? Some would say an alien. Some would say from outer space.
Oh man. Yeah, I think you'd have to. I mean, it would be if he does. Okay, here's the thing. If he doesn't do this, I think it's proof that they don't exist. Because regardless of the upside, downside, the ramifications, Donald Trump being the dude that gets to
Oh
announce the
yeah.
scoop on that, he is not going to walk away from that.
12 presidents wouldn't do this for you. I did. Trump is doing this. None of the other presidents. I'm better than all the presidents because I did this. Oh yeah. 100%. He'd want to take credit for that.
Pulls up a chair in the Oval Office in front of all that gold shit on the wall, and it's like a little chair for the alien. I
Yeah.
don't know. What would you do? What would you do? Would you do it? And would you do it? What's interesting that I had never thought about, or we're rambling, but this just fascinates me, like the thought experiment. I would have always thought that you would have, not that the United Nations is all that, but right, like if we're going to announce to the world that we've encountered a different civilization, I kind of feel like you would have you'd be in the big assembly room at the United Nations, and it would be Putin and Xi and Trump, and they'd all be embracing and saying, "Here we are." But if indeed it has over these 80 years gotten to the point where there's active programs trying to reverse engineer the time travel or whatever this is, the
Okay. Now, what if I know? I hope people don't think we're going like sci-fi here, but I mean, what if there was a hostile threat? Are we in North Korea pissing and moaning each other if we're all going to get annihilated by an alien force, or would people come together like, okay, this is the survival of the species?
yeah,
And does that change left and right? Does it change cultures? Does it change You'd hope so. You'd hope people aren't arguing till their death instead of coming together and finding a solution.
yeah, I just wonder um what's that like if we're, like I said, if we're both, all of us are independently trying to reverse engineer. One of the things that's interesting to me, the the dramatic increase in UFO appearances in the atomic age. Like if you look at reports of that, there were occasional things from way back, but it really is starting in the 40s after the atomic bomb. And people say that maybe that it's the aliens, that we're not really in a simulation, but that we're in a zoo and they're kind of watching us from a distance. And then people start talking about nuclear weapons and annihilating the earth, and they're like, oh, hold on. And so that's why they're flying over military bases. And
Mm,
maybe they've already intervened and kept Russia from using tactical nukes in Ukraine or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Like, hey,
because
we
then
need
you've
to
got
preserve this
weapons that
place.
have global ramifications.
Yeah. So there's something about our culture that would need to be preserved, and why?
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
I really am looking forward to seeing how our producer is going to make all this nonsense into an actual headline of a this podcast is about, it's like Seinfeld. This podcast is about nothing.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, let's as homework, we'll link this documentary. I don't know what you're doing over the weekend. Let's
I'm
both
watching
watch
it
this
for
thing.
sure. Yeah, I'm thinking
And
about getting a little party together to watch it with some friends.
we can regroup on that and see. It's apparently a cast of stars. Marco
Yeah.
Rubio, James Clapper's in it, I guess. I mean, like legit people.
Yeah.
Our listeners will hear it first. If they hear something about President Trump's asked everybody to tune in for a special bulletin tomorrow night, we know we got the drop on it.
And then the first reporter's question, isn't this an elaborate scheme to cover up the lack of release of the Epstein files? Gotta go back there.
Hey, thanks for joining us on this episode of Bourbon and Rum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us keep the good spirits flowing.
And we invite you to join this conversation. Follow us on our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear.
And until next time, cheers.